Hi pals and welcome to a new video. There are some new subscribers here and one of my most watched videos is called 12 Books to Introduce Myself, which I filmed when I started this booktube channel earlier in the year. What I thought we'd do is the same idea. I have picked 5 books to reintroduce myself to anyone who is new here, but also this is just a great chance to talk through 5 books that I think are absolutely incredible by some of my favourite authors. We'll just have a really nice chat about some brilliant books. If you've read any of these, I would love to hear what your thoughts are on them, or if you're planning to read them, I always love to hear that too. My drink of choice is a mid-afternoon pick-me-up coffee. We'll go ahead and get started on our first book. The first book, in hindsight, I cannot believe didn't make it on to my original video, and it is The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie by Muriel. This is a favourite book by a favourite author of mine. I have it in this lovely hardback gift edition that they reissued in about 2018, 2017, which I really love. I'm slowly working my way through Muriel Spark's work. I have to say that this was the first book that I ever read from her, and it is still my favourite of her novels. I originally read this maybe 10, 12 years ago. I came to this quite late on, but I picked it out because I was going to Edinburgh on the train and I thought, well, I'd really love to read a Scottish author from Edinburgh so I can match kind of place and book. So I bought this. I bought it in a Penguin Modern Classic originally, and because this is really short, I think it's maybe like 120-ish pages. I read this on the train, one of my most memorable reading experiences. I've reread this since maybe 3 or 4 times and this never ever lets me down. It's truly the most remarkable novel, not a single word out of place. I think that this was written in the early 1960s and is set in Edinburgh in the 1930s. That kind of interwar period is one of my favourite periods of history to read about, and also for novels kind of written in that period as well, which we'll talk more about later. So in terms of the time period, the setting of Edinburgh, which is a city that I love, this is already kind of completely my cup of tea. This is largely set in a school and follows a group of young girls who become the favourites of their teacher, Miss Brodie, and they become kind of the Brodie set. She's giving them a very loosely defined classical education. She calls it leading the girls out. So lots of art history, lots of classics. But because this is the 1930s, Miss Brodie is also very taken with the fascist movement. That's all I'll say in terms of the plot, but Muriel Spark novels, if you've read this or read any of the others, are darkly comic, they're incredibly perceptive, they're fun. One of the things that I love about this is that it plays with that trope of the inspirational teacher, but Miss Brodie isn't quite that. And one of the most famous lines from this is Miss Brodie's, where she says, "Give me an impressionable girl at a young age and she's mine for life." That's kind of the novel boiled down to one quick sentence. The next Muriel Spark I have on my list, which I think I included in my January book haul because my mum got it me for Christmas, is The Girls of Slender Means. So yeah, I'm slowly working my way through all of her backlist. That's the first book, The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie by Muriel Spark. Next up, we have The Making of a Marchioness by Frances Hodgson Burnett. Now, she is most well known for her children's novel, The Secret Garden. When I was a kid, I was obsessed with The Secret Garden, especially the 1993 film adaptation of the book, which I've watched, I couldn't even tell you how many times, and occasionally, if ever I'm sick, I still watch it now in my 30s. The Making of a Marchioness is one of her adult novels, and in part is largely a kind of romance novel. This was published in 1901, but I will say that I think it's still very kind of late Victorian in terms of the portrayal of marriage in this, the values, etc. I do consider this more of a Victorian novel. I have it in this lovely Persephone Books edition. Persephone are one of my favourite publishers, as beautiful end papers, and I have the bookmark as well. I once had this described, and it might have been on the Persephone Books website, as the perfect hot water bottle novel, which is exactly what this is. I sometimes describe these types of novels as intelligent comfort reading. They're kind of the same thing, but that is a genre of books that I'm so keen on. This is an example of that. Nancy Mitford, who we'll talk about in a second, is an example of that. I've recently got really into E.F. Benson, Map and Lucia novels. Woodhouse, one of my favourite authors. That kind of genre of intelligent kind of comfort reading. And so you will see these types of novels pop up quite a lot on this channel. If you're familiar with Nancy Mitford's novels, The Pursuit of Love and Love in a Cold Climate, so the first two of the Radlett novels, this is the book that is name dropped in both of those. It's the love story that the girls always aspire to, and it's also the book in Linda's bookshop. She puts this in the window and takes out the book on Karl Marx, which I very much approve of. I read this for the first time last year, and I had such a good time with it, and it's very much become a fan favourite ever since. The heroine in this is Emily Fox Seton, and she is well born, but on the kind of periphery of a kind of upper class family in England. But following the death of her father, she's fallen on hard times. She is now considered a spinster. She's living in a bedsit in London and just about getting by. The things that I love about this though is that she's relatively content with her life. She makes do and she gets on, and she is able to kind of stay like presentable and keep up appearances. She's very kind as well and very loyal. The edition that I have, the Persephone edition, is actually two novels. The first one being The Making of a Marchioness, which was published in 1901. And the second half of this is the sequel to that, which I think is called The Methods of Lady Walderhurst. I always just think of them as one book now. The sequel is very influenced and inspired by the culture of Anglo-Indian Empire. A lot of the characters are working in British India. In terms of atmosphere, think A Passage to India, but in terms of like values, like I said, this is very much Victorian, nowhere near as forward thinking as say A Passage to India or Burmese Days. I always think of Barbara Pym novels as being like the heir to Jane Austen. This is kind of the same vein, and one of the things that I love about this is that the heroine, Emily Fox Seton, is an older woman, and yet she still gets the kind of really great romance love story. If you're new to the channel, it's probably important to know that one of my favourite genres is crime, but definitely classic crime, golden age crime, more so than new releases. You'll see a lot of Agatha Christie popping up in this channel because I'm currently reading them in series order. One of my favourite publishers are the British Library, and they publish their British Library crime classics. So I've picked one of my favourites as a way to introduce myself. This is Death on the Cherwell by Mavis Doriel. There are a lot of things I love about classic crime, and one of them is how, in terms of the mechanics of the mystery, for me, nobody does it better in terms of plotting. I also really love their simplicity. The British Library have also published two other Mavis Doriel Murder on the Underground, which I love. If you like crime set in London, that one is fantastic. The Santa Claus Murder, which is perfect as like a Christmas classic crime. So all three of hers that I've read, I've absolutely loved. This one was published in the 1930s, so is very much in that kind of interwar period. This is set in a fictional Oxford University college called Persephone College, which I just love. In this, the bursar is found dead in the river Cherwell. This is just a really solid murder mystery. I think I read this over summer, and I think it makes a fantastic summer read. But yeah, just an example of some of the classic crime and crime that you will see on this channel. One book that I bought recently that I haven't hauled yet is another one of the British Library crime classics, and that is Tea on Sunday by Lettice Cooper. This one was published relatively recently, and although this one was written in the 1970s, it's very much meant to be that kind of golden age crime novel. So you will certainly see a lot of these pop up. Book number 4 is Heartburn by Nora Ephron, so we're headed over to the States. I have it in this Virago Modern Classics edition. I love Virago, they're one of my favourite publishers. This was written in the 1980s and I think is almost autofiction in the sense that it's based on Nora Ephron's failed marriage to the journalist Carl Bernstein of Watergate fame. We follow Rachel in this. She is 7 months pregnant and she learns that her husband is having an affair. This is very much centred on like Washington to New York upper middle class society. I adore Nora Ephron. Her films are still my like absolute favourites. I rewatch them every year. Sleepless in Seattle, You've Got Mail, When Harry Met Sally. Nora Ephron's films, like her books for me, are just full of like warmth and like wisdom, and are very perceptive. They're very funny. I'm also a really big fan of Nora Ephron's essay collections. This one is I Feel Bad About My Neck, and this one is The Most of Nora Ephron, which also has essays, film scripts, etc. in this. I adore both of those. Her essays are really fantastic. Heartburn the film is also fantastic too, and it has Meryl Streep in. One of the things that I will say is that I wouldn't read a Nora Ephron book for the plot. Like I said, you're reading it for the warmth, for the fun of the thing. This one also, which I love, has recipes thrown in throughout them, and I've always wanted to try and make one of the recipes. I usually reread this every 3 or 4 years, and I think I read it maybe like 2 years ago, so next time I read this I may well make something from one of the recipes. That is my 4th book, Heartburn by Nora Ephron. For book number 5, I've chosen one of my favourite Victorian authors, Anthony Trollope, and I've chosen the first book from his Barsetshire Chronicles, and that is The Warden. I love Victorian literature. I definitely say, as I mentioned earlier, the interwar and then Edwardian are my favourite time periods to read from, but I do also adore reading Victorian fiction. I've chosen The Warden, but I did really mean to choose the Barsetshire Chronicles, the whole series. I have all 6 of them here in some beautiful like gift editions. I had one of my best ever reading experiences with these novels. I read them originally in 2016 or 2017, and I read some and then I listened to audiobooks for others, and I think the audiobooks are narrated by Timothy West. He does such a good job on them. I really recommend those if you want to get into reading them. I actually don't have the arm strength to hold these books up for all that long, so I will mainly hold up The Warden, but it could rarely be any of the books in this series. I actually remember when I read them that Dr. Fawn, the 3rd one, was my favourite one, but obviously you do have to start with The Warden, or well, it helps to start with The Warden. The Warden is all about 19th century ecclesiastical politics. It can be a little bit dry. Personally, I love that because I love the culture surrounding like the Anglican Church. I find it absolutely fascinating. It's one of the reasons why I get along so well with like Barbara Pym, with E.F. Benson, etc. But from The Warden, the series then goes on from strength to strength. The series are populated by vicars and bishops and doctors, the upper classes looking to make a good marriages to kind of secure their finances. Over time, the place and the characters within this series, you come to know them so well. And although each novel does follow a different set of characters, you do get some characters that you've met previously pop back up again, which I absolutely love. And one of the things I'd also say about this as well is that the characters in this feel very true to life, which is always really important to me. I'm planning an autumn winter reread of these this year. Well, that's the plan anyway, because I know when it comes to autumn and winter, that will just be the most perfect reading experience. So that's The Warden by Anthony Trollope and the Barsetshire Chronicles. I do also have an unread Anthony Trollope on my shelves, The Way We Live Now, which I have been meaning to get to for quite a while. So that is all 5 novels. I hope that you found that interesting. Like I said, if you've read any of these, I would love to hear from you. I always love reading the comments. You guys give me so many good suggestions as well. I didn't make a video last weekend because I was out hiking in the Lake District, which is not too far from me. So I did want to give an update on what I'm currently reading, which is The Heat of the Day by Elizabeth Bowen. This is on my summer reading list, so this is just like a check-in to say I'm absolutely loving this. I'm almost done with it. I think I'll probably finish it this evening or this afternoon. This is set in London during the Second World War, just after the start of the Blitz. It's just a literary spy thriller. The writing in this is absolutely incredible. The sense of atmosphere is perfect. At the end of May, I included this in my summer reading list plans. And I think it was Joanna who left me a lovely comment to say that this was one of her favourite novels, but that actually the writing can be quite disorientating and quite hard to kind of wrap your head around at first. And I had that exact experience with this. When I first started it, I felt like the writing was like just slipping like through me and I couldn't quite get a hold of it. So thank you so much for that comment, because if you hadn't have left that, I think I might have put this down and just thought, oh, it's not the right book or the right time. But I persevered because I knew it wasn't just me, and now I'm just absolutely loving this so much. So I wanted to say that this will be a favourite of the year, I'm sure. I'm also listening to Emma, the Penguin Classics audiobook narrated by Fiona Stafford. I'm almost done with that. That was on my list for Jane Austen in July, and I'm probably going to finish that at some point over the next couple of days. That is it for today's video. I hope that you're all having a lovely day and a lovely week whenever you're watching this, and I will speak to you all soon in the next video. Bye.